And I got to a position where I thought to myself, do you know what? Screw this. I'm not going to keep trying to get rid of this every day, because I've tried that method for a bloody long time. I'm going to work on the basis of, even if this takes me 5 years, even if I'm stuck, locked in my head for the next couple of years, for a lot of the time, physical anxiety, do you know what? I'm not going to die. It's going to feel crap a lot of the time, but you know what? It's my option. I'm going to learn. It's my genetics. I've got the option to learn and to change my thinking. I'm going to take this as a journey. You know what? I've been trying to get rid of it every day, every single moment. I'm going to give it a few years, see what happens. Very quickly, I realized there was a lot of weight taken off my shoulders, because in that moment, I realized very fast that I had this sort of internal work rate, this insistency to get rid of it very, very quickly. And that was sort of stoking this sort of OCD fire, because the inner work rate is like treading water in a pool. When you're treading really fast, you can't float. And what's floating? Floating is that very sort of important part of the recovery journey where we're learning to sort of let go more. And I'll get 100 messages saying, how do I let go? How do I float? Because that's what I was doing. Because then I was chasing, I want to know, I want to think, I want to answer, I want to fix. And what was happening there is I was very much trying to tread water more frantically. Claire Weeks talks about floating. It's one of the key principles in her books, Self-Help for Your Nerves, and the book on our reading list, and many of her other books. If you go into anxiety forums, which I spent over a decade in, floating was one of those things that I started to learn more about as I went through, as time went past. And I started to think to myself, well, hold on, this is what I'm doing. I'm fighting so hard to get rid of this and chasing and going to every post and everything. And I started to change that. I started to say to myself, right, no Googling, which is obviously one of the most important things when we're trying to recover. And I then started to think to myself, all right, just live this day. Even if you feel absolutely shit, you're going to feel anxiety pumping through your chest. Even if you feel all of that, you've still got to live your life. And that was really important to me. That changed a lot for me. I'd spent a lot of time up until that, just every moment measuring it, like with an internal thermometer in my head. How anxious am I? I had this sort of imaginary internal thermometer in my head all the time. How anxious am I? How was today? How much did I enjoy that day? When I went out the other night, was I feeling relaxed? Was I feeling anxious? What was I feeling? Whenever I was standing in a bar, I would be thinking, how anxious am I? How chronic guilty am I? And obviously that was locked on and latched for a long period of that time. So that's where it was going, and everything I did was in relation to wanting to be rid of a sensation. If I was lying in the sun, I'd be thinking, am I feeling relaxed? Or I'll stay in the sun all the time because my anxiety is lower. If I'm eating chocolate, does that make me feel better? So I'll just do more of that. If I'm working out, then I'll work out all the time to get that feeling. And I was doing everything to fight it, to get rid of it. And that was the problem. I was trying everything to escape, everything to run from it internally. That was the problem. That was what was really keeping me stuck. But that doesn't mean it unlatches with that simplicity. Otherwise, what would happen is we would be able to just read books that were talking about these sort of principles, which can be answered quite simplistically, as I'm doing here, but it's certainly not that. To often get under OCD, and let me highlight often, because in a lot of cases not needed, it certainly was with me, to get it to release the chronic guilt and chronic anxiety, I had to get under those very stubborn, irrational beliefs. And that involved working towards unconditional self-life and other acceptance, the main principles that Albert Ellis taught in his REBT, Rational Motive Behavior Therapy, which formed CBT later on. He outlined why, and also another quote to draw in there is Korzybski said that God may forgive our sins, but our nervous system won't. And that was very true. And that's what he draws on that in the Myth of Self-Esteem book, talking about, in reference to quotes like that, how our nervous system just stays completely latched on when it sees that there's something to be terrified of, something to be scared of. And that was very much the case for me, because I was completely scared with a chronic real event from the past over 15 years ago that I believed made me guilty chronically and should be tortured in my mind forever and ever, the usual harm, OCD, chronic guilt related stuff. So it was realizing that actually I could accept myself still if I change my perspectives and adopt unconditional self-acceptance instead of conditional self-acceptance, which makes a scientific evidence-based change in thinking as opposed to the irrational, which isn't. And so I was able to see that. I was able to see that I was just accepting myself conditionally and writing myself off if I did something wrong in the past, which obviously OCD would zoom in like a homing missile for that thing. So that was a very key part of the journey for changing things. And but it took a long time to understand that, because obviously that's going against what most of the society thinks. Most society is very, very much conditional based. They're very stuck on what people think of. If what people think of them, they view their whole self as if people think they're cool, then they rate themselves as completely cool. If people think they're weak or not cool, they view themselves as that, and so they're bobbing around to whatever people are thinking of them at different times, and that's sort of jumping around left, right, and centre.